December 25th, 2025, Christmas Day. While the world celebrated with their families, the USS Paul Ignatius, a US Navy warship, launched Tomahawk missiles at Nigeria's Sokoto state. Each missile worth $2 million. Target: ISIS terrorists. But is the truth really that simple? No. Over the next 25 minutes, I'll show you what the mainstream media isn't telling you. Because this story is about much more than fighting terrorism. This story is about $1 trillion in lithium reserves, about Russia's Wagner Group making $1 billion a year from African gold mines, about how China is quietly buying Africa's future, and most importantly, about why African leaders like Burkina Faso's Captain Ibrahim Traoré might be the real target. December 25th, 2025, Sokoto State, Jabo Village. Local time, 2:30 p.m. Villagers were leaving afternoon prayers. Then, a sound from the sky. Tomahawk missiles. US AFRICOM. Multiple ISIS terrorists were killed. Pentagon. December 27th. We did not conduct operations in Sokoto State. Jabo Village residents. We haven't seen terrorists here in years. There were no casualties. 3 different stories. Which one is true? The answer will shock you. Let's break this down step by step. December 25th, 2025, Christmas morning. President Donald Trump made an announcement. We have launched military operations against ISIS terrorists attacking Christians in Nigeria. America always stands ready to protect the innocent. The same day, Nigeria's Foreign Minister Yusuf Tuga confirmed, as the Nigerian government, we cooperated with the United States. We provided intelligence. President Tinubu authorized the operation. Target: the Lakurawa group. Who is Lakurawa? A group active in northwestern Nigeria since 2017, officially designated as terrorists in 2024. Alleged connection: Islamic State Sahel Province, or ISSP. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2017, Lakurawa was invited by local authorities in Sokoto and Kebbi states. Yes, you heard that right, invited. Why? Because bandit gangs were terrorizing the region, killing villagers, stealing livestock, demanding ransoms. The Nigerian army was overwhelmed. Local authorities became desperate and called in Lakurawa. At first, it worked. Lakurawa protected villagers against bandits. Some villagers even saw them as heroes. But then something changed. Lakurawa began implementing their own interpretation of Sharia law. Strict rules, music banned, smoking banned, women's movements restricted. Those who didn't comply faced punishment. Villagers became uncomfortable, but couldn't speak out, because Lakurawa was armed. In 2023, the situation worsened. A military coup happened in Niger. Border security collapsed. Lakurawa received reinforcements from the Sahel region. Weapons, training, new fighters. November 2024, the Nigerian government officially designated Lakurawa as terrorists. December 2025, the US bombed them. Now the question is Lakurawa really ISIS? The answer: it's complicated. Some analysts say yes, they're linked to ISSP. They use similar tactics. Other analysts say no, they're mostly local farmers and herders. They use the ISIS flag strategically to attract international support. The truth is probably somewhere in between. But here's the real question: why did the US intervene now? Lakurawa has been there since 2017. Why were they bombed in 2025? The answer has to do with what's happening across the Sahel, and with a man named Ibrahim Traoré. Jihadist groups in Nigeria aren't new. The story begins in 2009. Mohammed Yusuf, founder of Boko Haram. Boko Haram means Western education is forbidden. July 2009, Nigerian police launched an operation against Boko Haram. Hundreds of members were killed. Mohammed Yusuf was captured, but he wasn't brought to trial. He was executed in a police station. Cameras recorded it. The video leaked. Result: radicalization. Abubakar Shekau took over leadership, and Boko Haram became Nigeria's deadliest terrorist organization. The reign of terror. Bombings, massacres, kidnappings. April 2014, Chibok. 276 schoolgirls kidnapped from their school. The world was shocked. Michelle Obama launched the hashtag #BringBackOurGirls campaign. But most of the girls never came back. 2015, Boko Haram pledged allegiance to ISIS. Abubakar Shekau swore loyalty to ISIS leader Baghdadi. Boko Haram officially became Islamic State's West Africa province, ISWAP. But in 2016, something happened. ISIS central leadership was unhappy with Shekau. Why? Because Chokehold didn't discriminate. He was killing Muslims too, bombing mosques. ISIS said this is wrong. Only infidels should be targeted. August 2016, ISIS removed Chokehold. New leader Abu Musab al-Barnawi, Mohammed Yusuf's son. Chokehold refused to accept this. Result, a split. Two groups, JAS, Jama'atu Ahlis Sunnah, Chokehold's group, and ISWAP, Barnawi's group. Different strategies. Chokehold, attack everyone, create chaos. Barnawi, be strategic, target military assets, win local support. May 2021, a turning point. ISWAP forces overran Boko Haram's bases in Sambisa forest. Chokehold was cornered. Rather than surrender, he detonated a suicide vest. Thousands of Boko Haram fighters defected to ISWAP. ISWAP became the dominant group. 2025, ISWAP expanded to the northwest, merged with Lakurawa, and the US intervened. But why now? The answer has everything to do with what's happening in the Sahel. The Sahel, a region in northern Africa, south of the Sahara Desert, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, Chad, Nigeria. 2020 to 2023, 3 coups, 3 countries, 1 common theme. August 2020, military coup in Mali. January 2022, military coup in Burkina Faso. July 2023, military coup in Niger. In all 3 coups, the same slogan, France, get out. Why? Because France had been conducting military operations in the Sahel since 2014. Operation Barkhane, 5,000 French troops. Goal, fight jihadist groups. Result, failure. Terror attacks didn't decrease, they increased. In Mali, after the 2021 coup, terror attacks rose by 70%. In Burkina Faso, after the 2022 coup, deaths doubled. Local populations blamed France. You've been here for 9 years. Things are worse. Leave. August 2022, France withdrew from Mali. February 2023, military cooperation with Burkina Faso ended. December 2023, the last French soldier left Niger. France's Sahel adventure was over, but the vacuum didn't last, because Russia was waiting. Wagner Group, Yevgeny Prigozhin's private military company. Prigozhin died in 2023, but Wagner continued. In 2024, it rebranded Africa Corps, now directly linked to the Russian state. What is Wagner, now Africa Corps, doing in the Sahel? Official mission, fighting jihadists, real activities, much more. Mali has over 1,000 Wagner soldiers. Burkina Faso has over 500. Niger is seeing new deployments. Their tasks: 1. Protect governments, support coup leaders. 2. Secure gold mines. 3. Spread anti-French propaganda. 4. Increase Russia's influence. The economic model is simple. Security in exchange for mining concessions. Gold mines in Mali are under Wagner control. Estimated annual revenue, $1 billion. But there's a problem. Wagner is committing human rights violations. UN reports, over 300 civilians killed by Wagner in Mali. Village massacres, torture, mass graves. But the Malian government stays silent, because Wagner keeps them in power. Now let's talk about the United States. The US is watching developments in the Sahel with concern. Why? 1. Russian influence is growing. 2. China is expanding economically. 3. France withdrew. Western influence is declining. 4. Critical resources are at stake. And 5. A new type of African leader is emerging. Leaders who reject neocolonialism. Leaders who speak openly against Western military dominance. Leaders like Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. Traoré is 36 years old, a military officer. He came to power in September 2022. But he's not like previous African leaders. He doesn't bow to Western pressure. He expelled French troops. He partnered with Russia. He speaks about African sovereignty, not just in speeches but in policy. He says things like, Africa does not need permanent guardians. Security without dignity is not security at all. For Western powers that rely on influence, access and control, such leadership is dangerous, not because it promotes violence, but because it promotes independence. And here's where Nigeria comes in. Nigeria is Africa's largest economy, its most populous country, a regional anchor. If Nigeria is kept unstable, the entire West African region remains fragile. Terrorism in Nigeria justifies foreign military presence, intelligence operations, and security partnerships that stretch across borders into Niger, Chad, and the Sahel. This creates a security corridor that can be activated or redirected when needed. Think about it. Burkina Faso, under Traore, is landlocked. It shares borders with 6 countries. If those countries are unstable or controlled by Western-aligned governments, Burkina Faso can be isolated, pressured, strangled economically. Nigeria, to the south, is critical. If Nigeria is in chaos, if terrorism is spreading, if foreign troops are needed, then the entire region becomes a chessboard, and leaders like Traore become surrounded. This is not conspiracy theory. This is historical pattern. During the Cold War, armed groups were routinely created, funded, or manipulated to weaken governments that refused to align with Western interests. Afghanistan's Mujahideen, supported by the CIA to fight the Soviets, later became a global security nightmare. Libya was liberated in 2011, only to become a weapons supermarket for terrorists across the Sahel. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso all suffered directly from that intervention. None of this was accidental. Today the pattern repeats. Direct military attacks on leaders like Traore are no longer fashionable. Instead, modern regime change is indirect. It comes through sanctions, media demonization, economic pressure, and most importantly, insecurity. A country or region drowned in fear cannot think clearly. Populations under attack begin to doubt their leaders. They become desperate and easier to manipulate. The rise or rebranding of ISIS-linked threats in Nigeria serves this function perfectly. Western media quickly frames African insecurity as proof that Africans cannot govern themselves. When leaders like Traore reject Western military assistance, they are quietly painted as reckless or dangerous. The message is subtle but clear. Look at Nigeria. This is what happens without us. Yet the facts challenge this narrative. Western-backed security approaches have failed for decades. Billions have been spent, but terrorism spreads. Meanwhile, countries that have expelled foreign troops and pursued independent security strategies are showing signs of recovery, despite intense pressure and sabotage attempts. This is deeply inconvenient for imperial interests. It is therefore reasonable, not extremist, not irrational, for Africans to question whether terrorism is sometimes managed rather than eliminated. Chaos is profitable. Arms manufacturers benefit. Private military contractors benefit. Foreign powers gain leverage over governments, forced to beg for help. And any African leader who refuses this arrangement becomes a target. This does not mean that Nigerian fighters are CIA agents, or that every act of terror is scripted in Washington. That would be simplistic. Local grievances, poverty, corruption, and historical injustice are real, but it does mean that these problems are often exploited, inflamed, and redirected to serve larger geopolitical goals. Now let's get to what isn't being said. First question, is Lakurawa really ISIS? Official narrative, yes, linked to ISSP. They receive training and weapons from the Sahel. There's debate among researchers. Some say, yes, definitely ISIS connection. Similar tactics, coordination, propaganda. Others say, no, mostly local farmers and herders. Economic motivation. They use the ISIS flag strategically. The truth is probably mixed. Within Lakurawa, there are different groups. Some truly believe in radical ideology. Some are just trying to survive. Some are after economic gain. But they all get labeled ISIS. Why? Because the word ISIS is powerful. It creates fear. It legitimizes intervention. Second question, is the attacking Christians claim true? Trump, we struck ISIS terrorists attacking Christians. Nigerian government, the attacks don't target a specific religion. What does the data say? 60% of Lakurawa attacks are on Muslim villages. Motivation is mostly economic, ransoms, extortion, resource control. But the U.S. narrative is different. Why? 1. U.S. domestic politics. Christian voters matter. 2. Simple story. Good versus evil narrative. 3. Legitimizing intervention. Reality. Propaganda versus truth. Third question. Why December 25th? Why Christmas Day? Coincidence? Possible reasons. 1. Symbolic. Protecting Christianity message strengthened. 2. Media impact. Holiday news is slow, attracts attention. 3. Political. Trump's strong leader image. 4. Timing. Nigeria's elections are 2 years away. Regional instability helps certain candidates. There's a historical pattern. 2001, Afghanistan, after September 11th. 2003, Iraq, shock and awe campaign. 2011, Libya, operations during Ramadan. 2025, Nigeria, operations on Christmas. Religious symbolism plus military operation equals propaganda. Fourth question, who actually died? US AFRICOM, multiple ISIS terrorists were killed. Pentagon, December 27th. We did not conduct operations in Sokoto State. Jabo Village residents. No casualties. We haven't seen terrorists in years. 3 different stories. No independent verification. But there's a precedent. December 25th, 2024. Exactly 1 year earlier. Airstrike in Silame area. Target Lakurawa. Result. 10 civilians killed. Lakurawa escaped. Did the same thing happen in 2025? We don't know. Because independent journalists can't access the area. Fifth question. What do local people think? Words from a Sokoto villager. First there were bandits. Then Lakurawa came. Now US bombs are coming. It doesn't matter who's terrorizing anymore. They're all killing us. This is the forgotten truth. The real victims are always civilians. What happens if Nigeria falls deeper into chaos? Domino effect. Ghana, already warnings. ISIS expanding northward. Benin, increasing attacks on northern border.
Togo, growing security concerns. Ivory Coast, potential target. And Burkina Faso, under Traore, becomes surrounded. West Africa's last bold voices of resistance become isolated. Why? Because the security vacuum in the Sahel is spreading. France withdrew. Local armies are weak. Jihadist groups are strengthening. And external intervention isn't solving the problem. It's making it worse. History is repeating. 2001. Afghanistan. Fighting terrorism. Result. 20 years of war. Taliban returned. 2003. Iraq. Weapons of mass destruction. Result. Chaos. ISIS was born. 2011. Libya. Protecting civilians. Result. Failed state. Slave markets. Weapons flooded the Sahel. 2025. Nigeria. ISIS threat. Result. Unknown yet. But the pattern is the same. Short-term intervention. Long-term chaos. Local people suffer. Resource control changes. And independent African leaders become targets. So is there a solution? Yes, but nobody's implementing it. Real solutions. 1. Localization. Not external intervention. Support local security forces. Training. Equipment. But control stays local. 2. Economic development. Poverty is the source of terrorism. 60% of youth in the Sahel are unemployed. Give them jobs, you won't have to give them guns. 3. Education. Education is the best weapon against radical ideologies. Build schools, not military bases. 4. Regional cooperation. Strengthen ECOWAS. Support the African Union. Africans can solve their own problems. 5. Resource justice. Fair distribution of oil and mining revenues. If local people see the benefits, they won't support terrorism. But these don't generate profit. Military intervention is profitable. Arms sales are profitable. Resource control is profitable. That's why real solutions are being ignored. Africa is the most monitored continent on Earth. Satellites, drones, military bases, NGOs and foreign partners are everywhere. It is therefore difficult to believe that terrorist movements grow, travel, trade weapons, and recruit across borders without being noticed. When such groups are not only noticed but seem to survive indefinitely, suspicion naturally grows. When terrorism suddenly escalates at politically convenient moments, when solutions always involve foreign boots and foreign bases, and when anti-imperialist leaders are constantly surrounded by instability, Africans must ask, who benefits? Captain Ibrahim Traoré's real crime is not dictatorship or incompetence, as some Western media claim. His crime is reminding Africans that sovereignty is possible, that Africa does not need permanent guardians, that security without dignity is not security at all. If Africa continues to accept every crisis at face value, it will remain trapped in endless emergencies. But if Africans begin to connect the dots, to study history, and to trust their own instincts, a different future becomes possible. Terrorism thrives in confusion. Liberation begins with clarity. What did we learn on December 25, 2025? The U.S. intervened in Nigeria. Official reason: ISIS threat. Attacks on Christians. Reality: much more complex. Lakurawa was first declared heroes, now terrorists. Pentagon says we didn't do it, but villagers saw the missiles. Attacking Christians is claimed, but 60% of victims are Muslim. A new Cold War in the Sahel. France lost. Russia won. China is expanding. The U.S. arrived late. $1 trillion in lithium. Billions in gold. Strategic uranium. Fighting terrorism is the excuse. Resource control is the reality. And leaders like Ibrahim Traoré, who dare to say Africa for Africans, become surrounded by chaos. And as always, the real victims are civilians. Villagers in Sokoto. Families in Jabo. Children in Ceylon. Their voices aren't heard. Because in geopolitical games, people are just statistics. But let's not forget, behind every terrorist killed headline is a human being. Behind every airstrike is a family. Behind every intervention are long-term consequences. The next time the news says fighting terrorism, ask whose resources are there? Who's losing power? Who's winning? What are civilians saying? And which independent African leaders are being surrounded? The answers are usually different from the official story. December 25, 2025, Nigeria. Is this a beginning or an end? Is this about ISIS or about Ibrahim Traoré? Time will tell, but one thing is certain. The truth is never as simple as the propaganda. The threat in Nigeria should be confronted seriously, but not blindly. Africa must defeat terrorism without becoming a pawn in someone else's war. Otherwise, today's insecurity in Nigeria may become tomorrow's excuse to crush Africa's last bold voices of resistance. History will judge whether Africans ask the right questions in time. If you found this video valuable, please like it. Share your thoughts in the comments. Share it so more people learn the truth. And subscribe, because more in-depth analysis is coming. See you in the next video. Keep searching for the truth.